The tragedy of a teenager, poisoning in the Robards family. Fort Worth, Texas, USA. On February 18, 1993, 38-year-old Stephen Robards grabbed his stomach due to severe pain. The man felt the pain from the stomach spread throughout the body. Limbs are numb, consciousness is confused. 16-year-old daughter of Stephen, Mary, seeing this picture, was greatly confused. The girl did not think to call an ambulance and ran to the neighbors for help. A neighbor, Sandra Hudgens, who is Stephen's beloved woman, arrived and found the man lying unconscious on the floor, and he was foaming at the mouth. Upon arrival, the paramedics had no one to save. Stephen had been worried even before they arrived. His daughter was placed under her mother's care. An autopsy showed that the man had died of a heart attack. It would seem to be an ordinary case, but not everything was so simple in this story. In Fort Worth in the 1970s, Stephen Robards and Beth Lomer were high school seniors in love. Stephen, the son of an insurance agency owner, was one of the most attractive guys in school, 6'4", with dark curly hair and a lean, muscular body. Beth was no slouch either. She was president of the school's National Honor Society and an outstanding athlete on the track, volleyball, and basketball teams. Beautiful, smart, and effective. In 1974, when Beth was 18, she married Stephen immediately after he joined the Navy for 4 years. 2 years later, on July 10, 1976, she gave birth to their only child, Dorothy Mary Robards. After Stephen served at naval bases in San Diego and Florida, the young family returned to Fort Worth. The relationship was complicated, and in 1980, Beth separated from Stephen, taking Mary with her. The ex-spouses agreed to maintain a cordial relationship for Mary's sake, and the child, left in the care of her mother, continued to see her father twice a month. Mary grew up to be a happy and carefree child. Therefore, when her mother brought a new man into the house, the girl accepted Uncle Frank with warmth and understanding. Frank Burroughs was a former Navy petty officer and now a police officer. He was a good stepfather to the girl. Frank did Mary's homework, bought her sweets, and raised her just like her own mother and father. The girl admired Frank, but only for a while. One day, 16-year-old Mary returned home from school a couple of hours earlier than usual and saw something she shouldn't have. Her stepfather was blissfully spending time in bed with another woman at the time. This revelation greatly angered Mary. However, the biggest blow was the fact that her mother, upon discovering the infidelity, chose to maintain their marriage. Mary became increasingly withdrawn and stopped communicating with Frank, despite living in the same household. In the end, the girl decided to give her mother an ultimatum, hoping that she would eventually leave her stepfather. Mary told her mother that either she would divorce Frank or she would move in with her grandparents, Beth's parents. Her mother did not respond to her daughter's manipulation. Mary packed her belongings and fulfilled her promise. After living with her grandparents for a few days, Mary tried to return home to her mother, but they wouldn't let her in. Beth Burroughs described the incident as follows. "It was a terrible scene. We were all crying and screaming at each other. Mary was crying and asking me to pick her up, and Frank was yelling at me. You know the rule and you can't break it. The same thing that applies to my son should apply to her. He was right, I know, but it felt like he was making me choose between him and her." Then the girl moved into her father's house, and it is worth noting that Stephen was very happy about his daughter's move. By that time, the man was able to get into a long and serious relationship with his neighbor Sandra, but he did not live with his chosen one. Therefore, for him, Mary was a lifeline in an empty apartment. Despite her strong love for her father, Mary longed to return to her mother. She constantly called Beth, pleading to be allowed back home. However, by this time, Mary's stepfather had once again presented her mother with an ultimatum: either her daughter or him. The woman chose Frank, telling Mary that once she decided to leave, there was no turning back. Mary reluctantly agreed. According to her grandparents, she was able to recover at that time, and her life began to improve. Mary improved her academic performance, becoming one of the top students in her class, and made new friends. She was joking and laughing a lot, She looked very happy, but in reality, Mary had been hatching a plan in her head for months: how to get back home to her mother. On February 18, 1993, Mary stole barium acetate from a chemistry class at high school. That same evening, she added the eraser powder to her father's fried beans. At the time, Stephen's death was attributed to natural causes. No one suspected that he had been poisoned. After Stephen's funeral, Beth's mother and stepfather took her home. It was then that Beth told Mary that she was leaving Frank. They decided to pack their belongings and move to Panama City, Florida, where Beth quickly found a job. Soon after, Frank moved to Panama City. This time he tried to improve his relationship not only with Beth, but also with Mary. Mary was even ready to forgive him for his past actions. However, she soon discovered that he had been cheating on her. She found a note from his mistress. And this time, Mary didn't give her mother an ultimatum. She just said, "Mom, do whatever you want. You can make up with him as many times as you want, but I don't have to watch it. I miss Texas, so I'm going home." Maury called her grandfather Jim, her father Stephen, and asked to stay with him. And the grandfather, who had lost his son not so long ago, was only glad of this. Jim Robards did not notice anything strange in the behavior of his beloved granddaughter. The only thing was that Mary flatly refused to visit her father's grave. But then it was blamed on the resulting psycholection, the trauma of what he saw. In part, this was true. Since the day of her father's murder, Mary had been waking up almost every night from nightmares in which Stephen crawled out of the grave and called his daughter to him. One day, Mary couldn't take it anymore, and she was sitting with her friend and classmate Stacy High, discussing Shakespeare's play Hamlet. At one point, Mary asked, "Stacy, do you think people can live their lives without a conscience?" Stacy realized that the question was not asked for no reason, and then she asked her friend what was wrong. Mary said, "Guess," and Stacy started listing the worst things she could think of. She thought that Mary was probably pregnant, or maybe she had crashed her grandparents' car. But Mary kept shaking her head no. Then Stacy asked, "Well, you didn't kill anyone, did you?" Mary burst into tears and confessed to her friend that she had poisoned her father in February 1993. Stacy had been hiding this information for several weeks. She didn't want to betray her friend. However, unable to cope with her guilt, she called the police and confessed everything. Law enforcement agencies opened a case, and the investigation was resumed. The Bureau of Forensic Expertise tested Stephen's tissue samples using a gas chromatography mass spectrometry apparatus. The study took more than 6 months, but in the end, the experts managed to detect a highly soluble metal compound in these samples. The girl had already enrolled in university and moved to Austin, where she got a part-time job as a waitress. In October 1994, Mary Robards was arrested. Her mother hired lawyers for her using the money from the insurance policy after Stephen's death. During the interrogation, the girl revealed that she did not intend to kill her father. Instead, she tried to make him ill so that he would pass on the responsibility to her mother. However, she went too far. The court could not believe that the girl had committed such a crime just because she missed her mother. Therefore, for a long time, the version of Stephen's abuse was considered. However, Mary denied these claims, stating that her father had never been strict or unfair towards her. "I just wanted to be with my mother so much that I was willing to do anything to be with her," Mary said. "I never thought about anything. I was aware of what I was doing. I knew that I had done something very, very wrong. But I never considered myself a criminal." On the prosecution side, it was the same friend of Stacy High who reported the crime to the police. She knew everything about the dosage and the consequences. Mary is much smarter than she wants the public to believe. Before Mary's sentence was announced, she was asked if she loved her father. Mary replied, "Very much." She was then asked, "Do you regret killing him?" At this point, Mary turned towards her father's family, burst into tears, and repeated, "I am so sorry. Please forgive me." In 1995, Mary was found guilty and sentenced to 28 years in prison. And if the public thought that the verdict was unfair, too little. At that time, Stephen Robards' relatives, and in particular Mary's grandfather, considered the sentence too harsh. They forgave her, and they were counting on a suspended sentence. In 2003, Mary was released on parole. Now, at the age of 47, she is free and living in the Fort Worth area with her husband, whose last name she took after their marriage. When Mary was in prison, she asked her mother to tell Stacy that she had no grudges. She still loved her and held no ill will. After all, she added, "We were best friends once."